am County Executive Laura Curran. I am joined by many members of the task force and also by Deputy County Executive for Public Safety, Tatum Fox. I first of all want to thank Mayor Ralph Ekstrand for inviting us to do the press conference here. He was also a member of our task force, of our marijuana task force, so I want to thank him for his service. I also want to thank Farmingdale trustees Cheryl Parisi and Walter Priestley. We have legislator Rose Walker, in whose district we are in right now. Thank you very much for joining us. I want to give a special thanks to legislator Josh Lafazan, who was co-chair of the task force and was a real driving force to getting this done. Huge thanks to Police Commissioner Patrick Ryder and his team for their incredible work in pulling this report together in a very short period of time. So I'm very grateful for that. Very cogent, comprehensive work that they did. And I've also got to give a special shout out to our Commissioner of Health, Dr. Larry Eisenstein. When you look at the report and you read the data that he has and all of the information from the states, all the statistics that he has pulled together, I think it can help inform everyone, every municipality, every state that is looking at legalization, at the ability to sell and all of that. Condenses it all in a very great way. It's a wonderful report. And I have to give a big thanks to the rest of the members of our task force, many of whom are here. They each headed a subcommittee, and their reports of the subcommittee are part of this large report. The report is 79 pages plus 27 pages of public comment, so there's a lot of good information in there. I also want to thank the Town of Oyster Bay clerk, Jim Altadonna, who is here with us. We are in the lovely town of Oyster Bay today, so thanks for being here with us. So as you know, earlier this year, I directed the formation of a task force to study and prepare our county for the potential legalization of the sale of cannabis in New York State, adult use cannabis. The idea was a simple one. We didn't yet know what kind of legislation was going to come from Albany in this legislative session, and we still don't know, I have to point out, but we wanted to be ready. So I brought together stakeholder leaders to get ahead of this, to study local needs in advance of potential legalization, to examine the impact legalization might have, and to hear from our residents on the issue. After careful consideration of the evidence laid out in this report, and after consultation with law enforcement, with health officials and experts in health, with school officials and administrators, with our villages and our towns, and after listening to the input from concerned citizens, it has become very clear that when it comes to the legalized sale of marijuana in Nassau County, now is not the time. In terms of how this would affect our residents, I've concluded that right now, its costs would outweigh the benefits. That is why, at my State of the County address last week, I recommended that the legislature exercise the opt-out clause for Nassau should any legalization of the sale and cultivation of marijuana be passed in Albany this year. This was a decision that was based on the evidence that is in front of us right now. While much of the research and data on marijuana is still relatively inconclusive, there are concerning trends in states that have legalized marijuana sales. I'm talking about increases in traffic fatalities, in young people getting hooked on high concentrate vape pens, and in people, especially our young people, not taking seriously the consequences of driving while high. Our towns and villages also made it clear that this wasn't something that they wanted in their communities, and we heard loud and clear from school officials that they also were not ready for the impact. The legislation in Albany is still fluid, and it remains unclear how much, if any, revenue would actually come into the county, so we didn't feel we were able to do a proper cost-benefit analysis. I'm committed, and we in Nassau County are committed to taking a balanced, proactive approach that focuses on public safety, education, and the well-being of all of our residents. Now with that, I would like to turn it over to co-chair of the task force, Legislator Josh Lafazan.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank County Executive Curran, first and foremost, who through the creation of this task force continues to display forward-thinking leadership. Thank you, Laura. I want to thank Commissioner Ryder. Nassau County could not ask for a more capable individual in this role, and it's been an honor to co-chair this task force with him. I also want to thank Dr. Reynolds, Dr. Eisenstein, Mayor Ekstrand, Bishop Harvey, Chamber President Carlo, and Assistant Principal Campbell Ham, all who served honorably in the public's best interest as part of this group. On January 10th, the Nassau County Executive commissioned the Nassau County Task Force on Marijuana Legalization and Regulation. Our guiding mission was a simple one: to educate and inform residents of Nassau County about the potential impacts associated with the legalization of marijuana in New York State. After 2 months, 3 public town halls, 8 expert roundtables, and thousands of pages of research, I am proud finally to hand deliver to the County Executive our final report from the Nassau County Task Force on Marijuana Legalization and Regulation. It's 107 pages and was put together by the members of this task force standing behind me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our report came to a number of crucial determinations. We found that the legalization of sale of recreational cannabis products will likely have a negative fiscal impact on Nassau County, both in terms of public health costs and in terms of public safety expenses. We found that legalization may potentially result in increased levels of impaired driving and make our roads more precarious for Nassau County's motorists. We found that legalization may adversely impact workplace safety, especially in safety-sensitive occupations that involve the use of heavy machinery and skilled trades. We found that legalization of sale may potentially lead to increased levels of cannabis use disorder or other substance use disorders among our population. And though we have detailed many more recommendations within this comprehensive report, our task force came to one important conclusion, and that is at the height of a public health crisis where more than 162,000 Americans are losing their lives annually to drugs and alcohol, now is not the time for Nassau County to allow for the legalized cultivation, sale, distribution, or marketing of recreational cannabis products. Based on the conclusion of our task force's report, and in conjunction with the expert testimony, academic literature, and public input we have received over the last 2 months, this morning I filed legislation to opt Nassau County out of the legalized sale of recreational cannabis products, and that bill was filed with the clerk of the legislature this morning. The county executive has already strongly expressed support for opt-out in her State of the County address, and I am hoping for additional support from my colleagues in the legislature. In the event that New York State legalizes recreational cannabis products and that legislation provides an opt-out clause for counties, then the County of Nassau shall be deemed to have exercised that right to opt out of this bill. Our collective hope as a task force is that residents will read our report and make up their own minds for themselves. We have included testimony from both opponents of legalized sale and proponents who are in favor of legalization. We have included public reports from government agencies, medical practitioners, treatment professionals, and more. And we understand that many will agree and many will disagree with the final recommendation we put in our report. We simply would like the public to rest assured that this report was methodical, balanced, transparent, and guided from start to finish by one unified goal, which was to protect the general welfare of Nassau County's 1.3 million residents. So again, I thank the county executive for her confidence in me. I thank Commissioner Ryder and his department for their exceptional work, and all of my colleagues assembled here today. This task force highlights that government can and does work here in Mineola. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So legislator Lafazan mentioned that the public can now look at this report, and in fact it's on our website now. Anyone can go and read the entire report and make their own conclusions about what was found. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Josh's co-chair, Police Commissioner Patrick Ryder.
Back in January, when the county exec came to me and said, I want you to co-chair this task force on legalization of marijuana, I said, I'm not comfortable. I don't want to be part of it. It's not what law enforcement gets itself involved in. She says, that's exactly why I want you there. She goes, I want an unbiased opinion on what you think and give us exactly what the data tells us and exactly what the reports did. So we embarked on this mission where we assigned our think tank from the police department to start pulling the data. The data came mostly from Colorado, which comes from the Colorado HIDA. HIDA stands for High Intensity Drug Trafficking Areas. There's 27 throughout the country, and they respond to the ONDCP, Office of National Drug Control Policy. They get their data from local law enforcement, local medical facilities, and health officials. They don't turn around and just create data. So we felt that was the best and most accurate data that we can get from, and that we can build our report. Then we had the legislative meeting which was widely attended by a couple of hundred people, and we heard from both sides the argument. And we started to record that data. And we accepted anybody that had documents they wanted to submit for the report. Then we did 3 town meetings, and we felt it was important to do it in the townships. Started with Oyster Bay, town of Hempstead, town of North Hempstead, town of Hempstead, and the town of Oyster Bay. And our mission was to educate those on what this bill says and what the effects could be if we move forward and use the data from Colorado. That gave us this report. The report was done by our think tank, Lieutenant Jimmy Watson, Sergeant Craig Crowley, Intel analyst Casey Hackett, Intel analyst Kyle Beam, Intel analyst Ali Kohlmeyer. They all started to work on this report, and it was 24 hours a day for the last 2 weeks to make sure it was done on time and submitted in an unbiased way to the county exec. I know Josh gave the county exec his copy with the clip on it. I binded mine, all right? So, bounded, whatever the word. So, boss, that's the official.
Thank you very much.
I'm also going to present a copy from the majority side to Legislator Walker.
Thank you.
And from the minority side, Legislator Lafazan. So the 3 copies, they're the only ones that we printed to save a tree. But all of that is online to get it. The report is unbiased. And I had many conversations with many groups afterwards that were pro-marijuana. And we get the argument, but it's way too early to understand what the damage it could do to us, and it's way too early to understand what the money or the revenue is going to be generated for the county. So at this time, our recommendation in the report is that the county is opting out, and as you heard from the county exec during her State of the County, she's obviously taken that recommendation and made their own opinions to opt out for the best of the county. So at that point, thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we have several members of the task force with us. If any of them would like to come and speak at this time, you can if you want to. If you're not prepared, it's all right.
I think Jeff wants to speak.
Jeff?
You know,
This is Dr. Jeffrey Reynolds.
when the police commissioner volunteers you for something, you say yes. You know, I'm Jeff Reynolds. I have the privilege of running Family and Children's Association. We serve probably 25,000 young people a year and have been doing so for the past 130 some odd years. Big kudos to the county executive and to the co-chairs of the committee, Josh Lafazan and Commissioner Ryder, because what I'll tell you in this day and age, this isn't a popular thing to do. The world is moving in a place where we're looking at marijuana as a great provider of revenue sources, as a great healer of anything that ails you, and certainly the public opinion has swayed. For Nassau County's elected officials to stand up and say, not here, not now, I think takes an immense amount of bravery. And it's a bravery in this process that's come out of a lot of time spent looking at the ins and outs of it, a lot of time spent looking at the studies, a lot of time looking at what's happened in communities. And quite frankly, for me, as running an organization that is on the front lines of the opioid crisis, I've said it before and I'll say it again, we're in the middle of a crisis. We currently have people streaming out of our waiting rooms looking for services. I can't imagine what it would mean in terms of mental health and chemical dependency to lay something like this on top of that crisis, particularly here in Nassau County. And on a larger level, it's really easy to wonder that as Nassau County begins rebuilding itself community by community, whether or not this is something that would advance us or set us back. And I think today, our elected officials have stepped up and answered that question. So I thank you for the opportunity to serve, and I thank you for taking a stand.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reynolds. All right, and our host today, Mayor Ralph Extrand, has a few words to say as well.
Thank everybody for coming, and Nassau County is always welcome in Farmingdale.
Thank you. We love Farmingdale.
Yes, you do, and you've helped us tremendously rebuild downtown. As you may or may not know, not only am I the mayor of Farmingdale, but I am president of the Nassau County Village Officials Association, which represents all 64 villages in Nassau County and 450,000 residents who live in our village. So I'm just going to give you a little one paragraph I prepared representing Nassau County Village Officials Association. The proposed legislation would negatively affect almost every aspect of village life, from economics to public health to law enforcement. We always consider what affects our residents as a top priority, so we join with many other Nassau County-based organizations in law enforcement, in health, and in education in their opposition to this proposed law and recommend that Nassau County opt out. Thank you.
Now, with a business perspective, we have Francesca Carlo, who is president of the Nassau County Chamber of Councils.
We're right here on Main Street in Farmingdale. And as president of the Nassau Council of Chambers of Commerce, I really do have to applaud the entire task force, many of whom are here, as well as Josh and Commissioner Ryder for doing such an excellent job. Not only are we businesses that are based here in Nassau County, but we are residents. We live, work, and play here. And it is, I applaud the county executive for opting out. It's just not the time for this now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much, and we're happy to take any questions that you might have. Yes. It's a very complicated issue, and there were many things. And when you read the report, you read about the psychological impact, about the traffic crashes, you read about the acceptance of driving, more of an acceptance of driving while high or driving after you've consumed marijuana in some of the states where it has become legal. And those were very concerning to me. The other concern, I mean, obviously we have to be frank. We have financial problems in Nassau County, and you do want to look at the revenue. But because the legislation remains so fluid, we don't know what that revenue looks like, so we couldn't do a proper cost-benefit analysis. So it felt premature and rushed. That's an excellent question. That's absolutely something I thought about. So the larger point is, if the state legalizes marijuana, adult use cannabis, it will still be legal. What we're opting out of is legally selling it here, cultivating it and selling it here. And, you know, that is an issue. That is something that we have to think about. And, you know, it came to the conclusion that it just wasn't worth it at this point. There's too much uncertainty. I saw it for the first time on Friday, the actual finished report, but I have been speaking with members of the task force and with the co-chairs regularly. And what I heard from them really jibed with what I was hearing from municipal officials, especially from school officials, from community groups. And what I was hearing from both was really syncing up together that led me to this conclusion. Well, I'm going to encourage everyone to have a look at the report and draw their own conclusions.
Have you spoken to the governor about the potential impact?
We spoke about it after he heard my announcement. We spoke about it, about my decision, and he said, that's why we have local control.
You say not at this time. Will you revisit this issue like in any set amount of time, in a year or two?
It's really hard to predict. There is so much research that still needs to be done. We're waiting to see how this shakes out in other states. All right, thank you very much.